You can easily use the micro moment of the infatuation of our society to do something clever and silly. What people don't realize is that little clever video on Instagram that only got 90 views, one of those 90 views is someone who's actually considering to hire an attorney, and they actually like the fact that you were a little silly and not buttoned up, and you made them feel more comfortable to reach out to you to work with your law firm or your dentist's place or your, people are very linear. They don't realize how big pop culture is and how they can factor into their boring business. I had a gentleman reach out to me who has, literally I used a concrete cement business in one of my analogies in a piece of content. He literally owned a asphalt business. He literally started to make TikToks even though he thought it was the wildest, craziest thing he'd ever heard, and it literally has doubled his business. An asphalt seller, like guy that comes and redoes your driveway, made a couple TikToks, one went decent, another one went viral, and literally, if I recall properly the email, a business that was doing $800,000 a year, servicing a local area, I think he was in Wisconsin, is now doing 2.5 million. The tears were coming through the email. But most people who are listening to this podcast who are in a B2B or like a different kind of business are not thinking how TikTok can work for them.
Right, and pop culture doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have your celebrity endorser.
Correct.
You're playing off of what the conversations that are going on.
It's like being good at a cocktail party, right? Think of this as your social media marketing. You go out tonight and it's a fundraiser of your local PTA or the school or it's the banquet for the high school basketball team. Are you the kind of person that comes to that event and you're enjoyable to talk to and have a circle around you, or are you in the corner by yourself? The reality is being an introvert and not being comfortable in that is incredibly appropriate and awesome. As a business, you'd like to think that you're trying to market and get business. And so to me, there's so much more permission for creativity than people allow themselves. But people continue to wear their suit and tie in their LinkedIn profile. And they don't understand the room is what I also ultimately think. I think you take the most stuffed up person you know. Literally, I want everyone to close their eyes and just think about the most kind of buttoned up, stuffy, rigid person you know. I promise you, if that person goes to Las Vegas right now with their best friends from college for a weekend, they're going to be a different version of themselves than you know them. And I think businesses and brands have more permission to be contextual to the room they're distributing the content in. When I make Facebook content, I'm thinking about parents because I know the demo's going to be older. Those are gonna be different videos that I'm putting into TikTok where I know they're gonna be youngsters. The words and the videos and the slang and everything I say and do is different. Yet I believe most people are just making a video and then pushing them out on these channels and expecting for it to succeed. They think of it as distribution. I think of it as a place you have to be contextual to win the room.
Because it's a conversation.
Before it even gets into a conversation, you can't win when you're a fish out of water. As a communicator, if you don't know the room, you will lose. If you go give a commencement speech to a very conservative college and you sling unlimited liberal propaganda, it won't land with those kids, and vice versa. If you're a Jets fan like I am, and you go to Boston and you shit on the Patriots the whole time, you're gonna lose some people. You've got to know the room. And you're raising capital from a VC firm that is very buttoned up. That's a different presentation to an angel investor who they were all entrepreneurs and they built it themselves. If you do not know the slang, you will be out of place. And so I believe before it becomes a conversation, my friend, if you do not know what the picture and video needs to look like at 3:34 p.m. on a Monday in LinkedIn, which is mainly consumed by people who are at work. Think about all the psychology goes into this. I'm posting different content when I know you're at work than when I'm posting on the weekend and knowing you might be skimming your LinkedIn real quick while you're catching up on work, or you're at your kid's baseball game and you're bored and you're just looking at your LinkedIn. I reverse engineer the psychology of the room, the psychology of the person in the room at the time that they consume the content. That level of thought, besides thinking what the thumbnail looks like, besides thinking what the first 3 seconds of the video has to be to even keep you to consume it, this is a level of science in day trading attention that I believe 99% are not executing on in social, and therein lies the opportunity and the vulnerability. whether you are a nonprofit, whether you're running for mayor, whether you are running a small business, whether you're the CEO of a big company, a creator, an influencer, everyone is trying to figure out how to create demand.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like everyone's, when I say everyone's selling something, I don't see that as a negative. I mean, everyone's trying to communicate something that matters to them. I think selling is very good when you believe in what you're selling. I think if you're part of a nonprofit curing a disease, that is incredibly good selling. And I also don't begrudge someone who's trying to sell lollipops. I did that in 6th grade. Like everything's allowed as long as you're doing it the right way. And so I believe that the world of marketing and communication has made a very aggressive turn. And I think people are struggling and wasting money on traditional and digital. I don't think this is a digital versus traditional thing. I think that I know, because I live it every day, you can waste an ungodly amount of money on influencers, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Spotify, just as easily as you can in a newspaper or billboard or radio.
Yeah.
And so I think the craft of being great at storytelling, running ads, creating content for the modern internet, being prepared for the AR, VR world of the next decade, the framework that makes sense to me is day trading attention. Meaning, whether it's a Super Bowl ad, which I think is underpriced for Fortune 500, or it's a carousel ad on, Instagram or LinkedIn, or it's an emerging influencer on TikTok to make content for your local car wash business or SaaS business that's selling to Fortune 500 companies on LinkedIn, I think the nuances of communication and marketing have become so profoundly challenging that most people are really struggling. And I'm very fortunate to be sitting in the eye of the storm. And I always get most excited when I think I'm writing a book that is gonna lead to tens of thousands of emails of thank you. And I've written a couple of those, and I know what they feel like versus the other ones I've written that have less thank yous. I think this one's gonna be a big one. I think it's a follow-up to Jab, 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 Right Hook, which was a big book that I wrote in 2013 that said this is how you do content on social media. This one is probably the nerdiest book I've ever written. It's like I'm a little worried that it may not be as commercially successful because it is a little textbooky. On the flip side, that's what might make it very commercially successful. So I definitely pushed myself to go further into like going behind the cloak of like what I do for a living, what we do for a living, why a lot of things work for me. I'm proud of that. What I mean by that is someone said something to me 6 or 7 years ago that really felt nice. It was like, I remember it hit me right in my chest. She didn't know me very well. She hung out in this business meeting and then went out and she said, "You're incredibly intellectually generous." And I was very flattered by that. And I feel like this book is intellectually generous. I feel like I'm writing a book of the secret sauce that makes most of my stuff work. And I'm excited that people are gonna take that baton and be able to build for themselves. I'm fascinated by people's inability to get out of no culture, to put their head in this. I'm fascinated by putting your head in the sand. It's what led me to discovering emotional intelligence. For years, I was a public figure speaking of like, here's an opportunity, here's an opportunity, here's an opportunity. I would wonder why people close to me, let alone the general audience, wouldn't act on it. And it led me to realizing that people are insecure or lack self-esteem or really struggle with people's judgment or have these poor relationships with themselves. It's funny, when you speak about rapid response, I think it means someone who lacks fear. Because the nature of running fast to something new is potentially scary. You may fail, you may waste your time, you may get burnt. But for me, it's subconscious. It's all I really know.
And that's not a bad thing to waste your time. I mean, you're not really wasting your time.
Well, that's my point. Like, so many of my friends are like, you spent 30 hours digging into that hypothesis. Your time has become so valuable. Why are you doing that? I'm like, because if I write once every 45 times, it fully pays for everything else. I think people are incredibly good at academia, but not good at actual life. And so, to your point, I don't see it as waste of times. Things I've learned going down rabbit holes became data points and context to other moments of going down rabbit holes that allowed me to either bail early, pattern recognition, or triple down on an opportunity. And so, You know, I really don't know how a CEO or entrepreneur sees the world in any other way. I feel like that's their responsibility. I'm very empathetic to why a CFO or other executives in business context don't do it. But you know, I think it's funny, the whole framework of this makes me think about comfort, fear, self-esteem, insecurity. Those are the things that pop up in my mind when I hear it.